joining us for Anime Foodies. My name is Caitlin and I'm the teen adult librarian here at McCullough.
And I'm Rachel. I'm a navigator over at Oakland.
All right, and today we are going to make Katsudon. So Katsudon is a traditional Japanese recipe that contains a pork cutlet, fried eggs, and it's usually served with rice. It comes from the word katsu for pork and donburi, which is a rice bowl dish. It's also traditional for students to eat this before a big test because the word katsu sounds like the verb to win. So they eat this before a big test, a big game, anything that they might be stressed about, and it's supposed to give them a winning strength and victory. And in anime, it's also kind of a trope as well.
Yeah, if you've ever seen Yuri on Ice, you will be extremely familiar with Katsudon as kind of an integral part of Yuri Katsuki's re-entry into the figure skating world, as well as on My Hero Academia. It is Deku's favorite food.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So for this recipe, we have everything that we need. We need 2 pork cutlets, which we're going to pound down to about an inch thick with our rolling pins, or if you have a meat tenderizer at home, of course, you can use that as well. For our recipe, we will need, let me get my recipe here. We will need salt and pepper to season it, flour for dusting. We'll need 1 cup of panko, if you want to hold up the panko. So that's just a type of breadcrumb that's very popular in Japanese cooking to make things nice and crispy. We'll also need 3 large eggs, a half a cup of chicken stock, which I have right here. We'll need 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of what's called aji mirin. So mirin is a Japanese rice wine kind of thing, and since that is kind of hard to find in supermarkets, and also, you know, this is a cooking program for teens and families, I'm not going to cook with alcohol today. So this is what I found instead. So it's aji mirin, which means tastes like mirin, and this is very easy to find in the Asian or international store aisle of your grocery store. We'll also need a tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 medium onion, either white or yellow, whatever kind you prefer, a green onion for topping, oil for frying, and then you can also have 2 servings of white rice with this, since this recipe will make 2 cutlets, so 2 servings, and you can serve it with white rice, which is traditional. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to cut our onions. So I've got my onion here, and how we want to cut it, we want to cut it from root to stem, like this. So then you'll have 2 little onion halves here, just like this, and it also makes it a little easier to peel. And then once you've got the peel off, you can cut off the top and bottom. So you'll cut those parts off, and then you'll slice it like this. And remember, when we're cutting right, you want to bear claw the one hand, then hold our knife securely with the other. So while I'm doing this, we'll also need to take our pork chops and pound them out to about ½ inch, anywhere from ½ inch to 1 inch, somewhere just around there. So Rachel, if you want to go ahead and get started on that.
And I will be putting on gloves because we are handling raw meat. If you're at home, you can obviously just wash your hands. But for us, this is how we're going to do it today.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to cross-contaminate, so don't put your raw pork chops on your cutting board or anything like that, because then that could get those germs on your vegetables, and especially the green onions, since those aren't really being cooked, you don't want to get anything on those. So we'll go ahead and put it in a Ziploc bag, just a simple way to keep it all contained. And then Rachel is going to take care of, and there's no other way to do this, you just beat the heck out of it until it's about ½ inch, inch thick, somewhere along those lines. She'll do that while I'm slicing up the rest of my onions. Don't be gentle, go for it.
I was going to say, I don't know how to do gentle. I think I always end up with meat that's too thin because that's how you get your aggression out.
All right, so now you've worked up a sweat, working up an appetite. So then we're going to take our pork chop. This one's probably still a little too thick, but we're going to go with it. These are really thick pork chops to start. I don't know if I have any more stripe left.
I'm sure mine's as flat as yours.
Oh, I think yours is better actually.
Okay.
So we're gonna take them and then season them with a little bit of salt and pepper on each side. So I'll go ahead and take off one of my gloves for this part so I don't get raw pork over
No way to
everything.
not contaminate a little bit over here if we keep our gloves on.
So just a little salt and pepper on each side. And then we're also going to dust them with flour as well. Awesome, thank you.
Maybe.
All right, so then they'll get nice and coated in the flour, and then you're going to beat one of your eggs in a shallow bowl and then put 1 cup of panko in the other. And then what you'll do is you'll dip it in the egg and then press it into the panko and then set them aside while you heat up your oil. So your oil, you'll want to get a heavy bottom skillet for this part, and you're going to just fill the bottom of it with a good amount of oil, maybe like 1/3 of a cup or something like that, and you're going to heat it over medium heat. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Rachel's going to go ahead and take the egg, she's going to crack it into the bowl, and then you can just use a spoon or a whisk and just mix it around and make sure the yolk is beaten. And then in the other bowl, we're going to do 1 cup of panko. I'm going to grab 2 new gloves. So one way you can check and see if your oil is hot enough is to just take a few breadcrumbs and just drop them in. You should hear a sizzle. So I got a little teeny tiny bit of a sizzle, but I want a little bit more. I want to make sure that the pork gets crispy and not just soggy. So I'm going to let it go and heat up for just a little bit longer. But while that's going on, Rachel's going to go ahead and take care, I'm going to switch me spots, of dredging. So what she's going to do is she's going to take the pork chop, dip both sides in the egg, and then press it into the breadcrumbs. And then that's going to coat it all nice and well. And then you can just put them back on the same plate.
Okay, perfect.
Since we're going to cook them anyway, there's no cross-contamination there. They're all going to get fried. Perfect. Yep, you want to make sure that you press it into the breadcrumbs, that way they adhere to the pork chop. So once you've got them all coated in the breadcrumbs, your pork chops will hopefully be a little bit thinner. They're going to take about 5 to 6 minutes per side. So you're just going to lay it right in the oil and then cook it 5 minutes, flip it, cook it 5 more, and then you're going to set them aside to rest. And whenever you do that, you want to make sure that you set your pork chops on a clean plate or a cutting board. You don't want to use the same plate that you just used for your raw pork chops for your cooked pork chops, of course, because that will cause cross-contamination. All right, so let's go ahead and get cooking. So you can take your tongs, or you can use your hands too and just lay them in there. You should hear a good sizzle, and that means that your oil is hot enough. All right, and then we'll cook them 5 to 6 minutes per side. All right, and now we've got our pork pretty much almost done. Should look nice and crispy and brown. Hopefully not black like my other pork chop over here, but you know, it happens. So what you'll do, you'll go ahead and put them on a paper plate or a plate lined with paper towel just to drain for a little bit. And then Rachel's gonna take over cooking our onions. So these, we're just gonna cook them in our oil, and we'll add a little bit more here over the same heat, medium heat, until they're nice and tender and a little browned. So maybe about 10 minutes or so. So if you want to go ahead and handle that. And then while she's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and make our marinade. So we've got a half a cup of chicken stock. Ooh, those things are sizzling.
Maybe it would take 10 minutes,
Yeah, they might not. They might take less. So with your chicken stock, you're going to add 2 teaspoons of sugar. 2 teaspoons of our aji mirin, which again, that gives it kind of that teriyaki taste, that sweet salty combo. And a tablespoon of soy sauce. Just mix it really well so that the sugar dissolves. And you'll just set that aside while your onions cook. And also with this, so when our onions are done, we're going to add our marinade in there. We're going to slice up our pork chops and put that on top. And then we're going to take our last 2 eggs, we still have 2 eggs left, we're going to beat those together and then pour the egg all around, and we're going to cook it until it is just set. So however you like your eggs, if you like them really firm, you can cook them for a few minutes. You can just do it for a minute. So we'll see, once our onions are done, we'll go ahead and complete the recipe. So while those are cooking, I'll go ahead and switch places with you again. And I'm going to slice our pork chops, and you're going to just slice them into just thin little slices. And you want to make sure that they're cool. Mine are still a little hot, so you can wait until they're a little more cool to do this part. And it should be nice and done inside. And if you haven't already, you can go ahead and chop up the green parts of your green onions, and you're going to just top it with the green onions. And of course, if you wanted to serve it with some white rice, make sure that you've got your rice cooking, because rice generally takes 15 to 20 minutes to make. Make sure that you get your eggs ready, because this is all going to happen pretty quickly once the onions are done. And if you want to cook your onions for a little longer, to get them a little more caramelized, you certainly can, if you don't like that really strong oniony flavor. Because the longer you cook the onions, the sweeter they'll get. But traditionally, for the recipe, we'll just wait until they're nice and tender and just starting to brown. So, maybe a little bit longer on those. What do you think?
I think they look good.
Think they're ready?
Yeah.
All right, so what we'll do, we'll go ahead and pour in our little stock marinade. And then I'm going to turn the heat down just to medium-low. And we're going to take our pork chops, the slices, and just set them, nestle them right on top on the onions. I think I had a little too much oil in the pan.
Can happen.
All right, and then once you've got all of that in there, you'll take your beaten eggs and you're just gonna drizzle it all around. And then you'll just continue to cook until they firm up, so just a couple of minutes. And try not to mess with it. I always just have to constantly be poking at the food while it's cooking. You can just give it a chance to cook and for the eggs to set. think it's just about ready. So we'll go ahead and try a little bit. And of course you can eat this with rice. That's recommended that you do that. There you go. Try just a little bit here. So then when you're done, you'll get a little bit of egg in there, some onion, and then of course the pork. But it's gonna be really hot still.
Yes.
Very good. Let us know how it turns out for you. Send us some pictures, tag us on Facebook or Instagram, and also be sure to stick around and check out Rachel's manga recommendations. Thank you.
Hope you guys are enjoying your Katsudon. Here are a couple of manga recommendations from what I've been reading this month. First is Library Wars by Kiro Yumi. This takes place in a near future version of Japan in which the government has enacted a law known as the Media Betterment Act. This act has led to sweeping censorship across all forms of media. In response to this, the libraries of Japan have militarized to fight this censorship. Our story follows Iku Kasahara as she becomes the first woman to join the Library Defense Force, inspired by a man from her past as she looks to find him once again. The next title is Astral, Lost in Space by Kenda Shinohara. This also takes place in the future. In this version, though, Caird High School sends groups of 8 students on a field trip alone, no teachers or other adults, to another planet. Group B5 is setting off on their field trip, except their end destination is not where they expect. We follow them on their fight for survival and trying to find their way home. And if you are a fan of weird alien creatures and beautifully illustrated landscapes, this one is definitely worth a shot.